guests, this meeting of online presenters has now begun. Guests, please note that in order to be a member of our club, you must be a current or former active member of Toastmasters International and have completed at least 6 speeches from either the traditional or Pathways programs, or you must have substantive relevant presentation experience that you demonstrate in about a 3 to 5 minute speech delivered during one of our club meetings. All requests for membership are subject to board approval. If you have name and role, if you have one, right click and select rename to do so. I remind folks who are helping with Nik's speech to not do that, please, thank you. We have members and oftentimes guests from many countries throughout the world. Thus, as a professional organization, we ask that you please be aware of language or word usage that may be considered offensive or otherwise insensitive due to cultural differences. Please note that we will be recording the meeting. Your video and audio contributions may be used for our club marketing purposes. Please mute your microphone when you are not speaking. Today's theme is Who Would Have Ever Thought? Please welcome our Toastmaster for the evening, Toastmaster Deborah Carr.
Hi, everyone. Well, we do have definitely a full agenda tonight, and I'm excited that we're all here. As Lou had mentioned, the theme of tonight is Who Would Have Thought, and the word of the day is surprise, because who would have thought? Anyway, so I have a whole list of helpers tonight, and we're just going to go through our standard regular ones, not the ones that are helping with the next speech, because they're people. Are we ready?
Is anyone else hearing a lot of feedback there? Okay.
Try again, Deborah.
Yeah.
Try again?
Sorry, okay, there was a connection
with
your microphone.
Maybe I'm too close to my mic.
Yeah,
is
this better? Okay now.
Okay, thank you. It says my speaker is not working. Okay, so our timer tonight is Sil. Sil, would you please tell us your role?
Fellow Toastmasters and dear guests, as timer, I will time the prepared speech, table topics, and evaluation sessions. I will also alert each of them of the time they have left using the green, yellow, and red colors, which denote specific times. So for example, if the speaker gives a speech for from 5 to 7 minutes, green will be shown at 5 minutes, yellow at 6 minutes, and red at 7 minutes. And if the speaker goes over 30 seconds, I will clap quietly. So back to you. After each session, I will give a report. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster. Thank you.
Thank you. And Marty, you are the counter. Will you please help tell us your role? Need to unmute. Oh, Marty, if you'll unmute, please.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Did that help?
Yep.
Very good. As our counter, I'll be listening for some things like ahs, ums, ers, etc. Anything that we can use as a crutch word when we slow down too much and are not sure what to say next. I will also be listening to see if there's anything really neat about something somebody says. And I have to be a little careful there because I may be intruding on one of the other helpers' territory by doing that. But I expect to have a lot of fun at it. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Marty. Our grammarian is Jim Barber. Jim?
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. As the grammar cop this evening, I'm going to be listening intently to what everybody says throughout the meeting, not just our speakers, but our table topics participants, our evaluators, everybody. And I'm going to be listening for extraordinary uses of the English language, those that are extraordinarily good, or I hope not, those egregious uses of the English language. I'll be giving a report at the end. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you. And our watcher is John Quick.
Madam Toastmaster, as the watcher, I'll be doing some behind the scenes work right now, sending you messages, mostly of praise because everyone looks quite good today. But if there's anything you can fix, I'll let you know. Otherwise, I'll pay attention to the visuals that the speakers use today and highlight some at the end of the meeting in my report. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, John. And our chant monitor is Tricia, but I believe Emily jumped in. So Emily, will you please tell us about your role?
Yes, my role that has just been sent to me by John Quick and added to by Graham is to find the most helpful, encouraging, or humorous comments and give a 1-minute report at the end with the highlights.
Thank you. And last but not least is our vote counter, David Carr.
Yes, I'll be counting up the votes for the speeches, the table topics, and the evaluators. Seeing who did best tonight. The guests are welcome to vote. You vote by sending me a private message. So in the chat box, there's an option to change it from going to everyone to going to a specific person. I'll be down at the end of the list under V for vote counter. I'm Toastmaster.
Thank you. Sil, did you see Nik's speech timings there in the chat by
Yes, ma'am.
You're set, okay. Well, tonight we have 2 speakers, and our first one is Nik Lakhani, and his evaluator is going to be Lou Brown. Nik's speech is the presentation mastery level, number 4, building skills, managing a difficult audience. The Great Club is 3 easy steps using an online audience.
Your audio's messing up again.
All right, so will this help? Is
It
this
seems
better?
to.
Okay, I'm just too, evidently, evidently, I'm not supposed to be close tonight. Tonight's scenario is that you're a group of Toastmasters attending your very first online meeting. Feel free to ask any questions at the end of the meeting.
Yeah, we still can't understand. How about I introduce him for you?
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Grow your club in 3 easy steps using online attendance. Today's scenario is that you are a group of Toastmasters attending your very first online meeting. Feel free to ask questions at the end of the meeting. Online attendance is nothing new, and your area director will share how this new fandangled technology has helped many clubs grow and flourish throughout the world. With a speech titled Grow Your Club in 3 Easy Steps Using Online Attendance, please give a very warm welcome for your area director, Nik Lakhani.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I want to welcome everybody to this wonderful meeting today. I know it's your first one. Lois and I are going to hold your hand and bring you through it, okay? And you, at the other end, you can have a coffee, latte, a little bit of Coca-Cola, or something a bit stronger if you wish, okay?
Oh man, I love when I get to have coffee. Do you have pastries?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Who's that over there? Hi, Tiger, right. How are you doing today?
Great, thank you, sir.
Brilliant. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to talk about the etiquette that we use for online meetings. I know that you've not been on online meetings before, but one of the things that I'd like you to do is to make sure all of you mute your mics. So Tiger, I appreciate the gesture. I feel supported from your wonderful talk about some coffee and bagels and pastries, and we're going to get on with this now. Don't forget, mute your mics. And if you do leave your seat, please switch off your video. Or if you're getting up, and you happen to have your no trousers on, it's also not a good look. So please be aware of some rookie mistakes that could happen. And it is recorded, as you said.
Did you really think there's somebody here that doesn't have their trousers on? Which one is it?
Well, I don't. Absolutely. Who's that? Chris? Yeah, absolutely. In terms of what we do, you know, this is the money shot, isn't it? This is absolutely the money shot for online meetings. Thank you for your interjection. Really appreciate that, Chris.
Who would have ever thought?
Yeah, no problem. Absolutely. Who was that? That was Chris again. Yeah. Well done, Chris. Thank you for that. In terms of questions, I know you will have questions and comments. Put them in the chat, okay? And I will deal with them at the end, I promise. If we don't have time in my speech, I will talk to you afterwards, one-on-one, virtually, okay? In terms of why you're here today because it's a serious topic. World Headquarters gave permission for our district to go and move our meetings online, as well as our speech contests. So earlier on today, I emailed you and I said to you that 2 weeks today, we're going to run our speech contest online. Some of you are competing, some of you may be judges, some of you may be role players. I am going to get you through this. I'm going to make sure we train you, give you enough information, and make sure you perform excellently well. However, today is a background and a practice for you to be in an online meeting. Therefore, I figured, why don't I tell you a little bit about online attendance? Well, that's what we're doing here. We're attending a meeting online. Now, all of us are online. However, something else has occurred previously in Toastmasters, which is online attendance for physical meetings. That means that some people gather in a room just like a normal bricks and mortar club, a physical club, but also online, people from all over the world attend. That's called a hybrid club or a club with online attendance. So we have online only clubs.
Wait a minute now.
Yes, Jim.
I know a little bit about this online stuff. I've been here since the very beginning, and I'm not so sure that you really know what's going on here. You know, this online stuff has been around, but it's not going to take the place of the in-person clubs. I don't care about this coronavirus thing. This is just something that's going to happen.
Jim, I totally agree with you. And this is what I'm about to say, that after we finish our issue that we have with this virus, you can go back to what you were doing before. That's fine. It's not a problem. And I really appreciate your point. You're right. It's not going to take the place. This online fad or newfangled technology, it's not going to take over from your physical club. It is not a threat to your physical club. In fact, it will enhance it. And I'm going to tell you how.
Nick, what's the difference between an online club and a hybrid club and a virtual club?
Okay, good question, Andy. What I'll do is I'm going to take that on board at the end of my talk. Okay, but I've touched on it already, but I will explain more of that later. Thank you for your question. I really appreciate that. Now, I'm going to actually tell you a little bit more about how you can help your physical club by not only being here today, but learning a bit about what other people have done already online. Okay, hands up who's been in a club or knows of a club who's had less than 12 members. Hands up. Okay. Now, if you and I are in the executive team, it's our responsibility to turn it around and make it stronger, isn't it? Yeah. Therefore, you go through marketing, you go through members, you actually find out, why are members not coming anymore? Why are they not, you know, maybe we had a change of venue. Whatever the reason is, we try to fix it, don't we? Because we want the club to survive. Well, with a hybrid club or online attendance, we can actually help struggling clubs. And I'm not actually just saying this because I think it can be done. I know it can be done. Take, for example, there was a club in Texas, and the coaches there, because they had less than 12 members, they were appointed coaches. What they did was they helped the executive team by not only going and doing the traditional things that you do to help the club, going back to old members, finding out what went wrong, and actually looking for new members, marketing in various different ways, but also what they did was they brought in new members online. The likes of myself and 2 or 3 other people who are strong Toastmasters, what they lacked was they needed a bit of direction, a bit of spirit, a bit of spunk, as we say here in the UK. And what we did was, in a few short months, we were able to actually not only increase the numbers in terms of the membership, we increased the quality in terms of evaluations and role plays, as well as the speeches, but also we increased the momentum. We created this momentum, made the club more attractive, so that when the marketing was taking place, people were more likely to join. And in less than a year, the club turned around, it became a hybrid club, and it changed its name, rebranded, and is now getting stronger. Fantastic, great job. It can be done. Hands up those of you who have been in another example of how you can help our clubs, what I call a middling club, something like 15 to 28 members. Hands up, who knows of clubs like this. Now, you think that, oh, it's okay, we're toddling along, not a problem. But what we can do is we can actually not only do the things that we did for the struggling club with online attendance, but online attendance also can help this particular type of club. For example, with diversity, that's diversity of people, not only all over the world, but diversity of people, maybe even some of your ex-members, who are not able to attend because of disability, or they're caring for a loved one. In addition, you can also have diversity through people who speak English as a second language, who come and join your club to improve their English. For example, I know many members who actually belong to their clubs in China, and then come over and go into hybrid clubs. Not only do they add to the club, they make the club stronger and more well-known. And there's more footfall, more visitors coming into that club. So geography is, so diversity is very important, but also geography. Physically, some people are not near a Toastmasters club. The person I spoke to in Colorado, the nearest club was 400 miles away. There's people I've met online who live in the Arctic Circle for 8 months of the year. Amazing. Well, what are they going to do in the nights off, in the winters? There's only so much chess you can play or solitaire. Let's get on and actually encourage them to join our clubs and contribute. And they will get a lot from it as well, as will we. In terms
sir?
of... Yes,
I'm
sir.
sorry, excuse me.
Hi, David.
This may be a dumb question, I'm sorry.
I'm sure it's not.
But, from what I understand, most of these online clubs, they don't even belong to a district. I mean, how are we going to, I don't understand how this is going to function. If you're saying we can have members from China, here in South Florida, I don't see how that's going to work. They can't bop over here and be participating in a contest or helping out as volunteers. Seems like it's really a mismatch.
David, yeah, well, you know what? At first, I've got to agree with you. At first, I thought, what's going on here? What's this? We're looking into a box, aren't we? But look at it this way. What you need is experienced Toastmasters and also extra pairs of hands in your club. It doesn't matter that the hands happen to be 6,000 miles away. They can always do a job for you. We have the ability to communicate over the land and the oceans in this world today. And this particular scenario that we find ourselves in has really brought it home to us how much we are connected together. Therefore, it's not about one club in Miami or in Florida. It's about the whole of us. It's about what you can do as a club in an area. And yes, online clubs are undistricted. However, clubs with online attendance, or these hybrid clubs, are districted. And will actually have the club office training and so on as per usual. Those people who are in online clubs only, in online clubs, can actually get some online training as well. There are ways and means that you can do this. The biggest thing is we have to have an open mind and an open heart. Okay? Any more questions? We will carry on afterwards. All right? Now, in terms of our club, our 18 to 28 club, our middling club, the third item that we can actually work on is the business aspect. Some of you have said today, I'm here because I want to learn about how to present online. I want to learn how to present in front of an audience. I want to learn how to present slides and so on. And you know, we can get better with contests and so on, and webinars and also as well. So it's adding skills to our portfolio, different skills that we hadn't had before. All right, so add that to all the other things that we've talked about. It's already a win-win, isn't it? Now, that's two ways we can actually grow your club. The third way to grow your club, and this type of club is very special. How many of you belong to a club between 30 and 70 members? Hands up. Okay. Now, I'm not kidding about 70 members. There's a club in your area called Manchester Orators who actually have, at the moment, 67 members. When do they all speak? Well, the point is, there's a lot of churn and there's a lot of heartache. A lot of people, if they miss their turn, they don't have another slot for maybe 2 months. So therefore, those type of successful clubs, over-successful clubs, can actually benefit from online attendance by having an overflow or a speech-a-thon session. That way, people get a chance to speak, people get a chance to evaluate, people get a chance to do the general evaluation. It's really, really important that people feel as though they're being heard. That's the whole point of Toastmasters. Otherwise, let's disband these big clubs. Another reason for these clubs that online attendance can help is that you can actually get them to a level by which just you can then split off. Thank you. You can actually split off and create a new club. You can create a new club, maybe on a different night, maybe in a different location. There's different ways that you can do it, but it's an option. And as area directors and as division directors and district directors all amongst you, we're all looking to grow Toastmasters. This is helping your physical club. Online attendance helps physical clubs. Now, the third way in which successful clubs can actually gain from this is by increasing the excellence that they have. For example, not only will they split off and create a new club, you can actually create a brand new club, which is either totally online or hybrid, and create it as an advanced club, and then attract more people from all over the place, all over the world, as an advanced club, because you've got it up to that level. This way, you actually benefit your home club, your physical club, because there's a stepping stone. Once you remember here, after a certain period, you can join the advanced club. Why don't you join? Do your 2 levels, and you can go and join the advanced club as well. And you can double your learning. All in all, in summary, what I've talked about today is about things that will enhance the physical club. This is not a threat. This will help you in your club. We're going to make it more inclusive, more skills, more experience, more clubs, and also a better experience for all. Now let's go do this. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay, we'll see how this goes. Thank you, Nick. What a wonderful, I love all our speeches that we have here. This was excellent tonight. Thank you. And thank you everyone for helping out. Graham Carnes is our next speaker. He is doing the engaging humor, level 2, learning your style, connecting with your audience. He's using humor to make a point. And Graham's working on engaging humor path, and today he will look at how and why we need humor in making a serious point. Please help me welcome Graham Carnes.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Ladies and gentlemen, they say that we remember those things in our lives that have the most impact. Now, why would a movie about a novice nun who is appointed as a housekeeper and nanny to a group of children have such an impact on me? Well, let me tell you, it's because I learned an enormous amount of life lessons from this movie. I went and saw it when I was a child. I remember my mother taking me, my two sisters, my brother, and 6 other children from our neighborhood all off to see this movie. And as I say, I learned some life lessons. I learned, for example, that plans are never set in stone. Maria thought she was going to be a nun. She ended up being a wife and mother. That you can overcome your fears by positive thinking. These are a few of my favorite things. When the dog bites and the bee stings and I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things and then I don't feel so bad. I learned that you could escape the wrong way. Yeah, they actually left Vienna and got to the mountains, got through the mountains to Switzerland by going in the wrong direction, if you know anything about geography. And I also learned that attention to detail is really important. I learned, for example, that a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down. Now, you may wonder why I mentioned attention to detail and that spoonful of sugar. Anybody who's a real fan will know that the spoonful of sugar comes not from from The Sound of Music, but from Mary Poppins instead. But it is important, I think, that the lessons that we learn, we take through. And one of those is that a spoonful of sugar does make the medicine go down in the most delightful way. The same way that a spoonful of humor in a serious speech helps us to understand the message that is being made. Now, much of what I'm going to talk about over the next 5 minutes or so comes from a speaker called Andrew Tarvin. He's the CEO of Humour That Works, which is a really interesting organization. He's an engineer who makes a living telling speakers and presenters how to use humor effectively in their presentations. And some of the things that he says are really important. He spoke recently on the Presentation Boss podcast. Presentation Boss and their podcast. They're a couple of friends of mine here in Brisbane, Australia. They're Toastmasters, Thomas Kraft and Kate Norris, and they run a podcast, and they interviewed him, and he made some really interesting points. He made, for example, the point that if you don't think you're a humorous person, if you don't think that you have inbuilt humor, you're probably right. But that humor, like speaking, can be learned. Now, you can probably never learn to be the world's best stand-up comedy speaker unless you are a genuinely funny person to start with. But you can learn how to incorporate humor into your presentations to make points that are important. And one of the things that Andrew says that's really important is that humor does not equal comedy. That it's not just about telling jokes. Yes, you can learn the structure. Yes, you can learn timing. Yes, you can learn other comedic devices. But simply putting jokes into your presentation is not the same as inserting humor into your presentation. He made a point that I thought was really quite interesting, that you should start, you know, we've all been told you should start your speech with a joke. No, don't start your speech with a joke. Never start your speech with a joke. Because unless that joke is a joke that your audience has never heard, and unless that joke directly relates to the point that you are trying to make in your presentation, then it's a waste. All you've done is you've told 30 seconds worth of joke, and then you've got 59.5 minutes to fill with stuff that's not funny, and your audience will think, oh God, why did I do this? No, start with a humorous story. Start with a humorous story that will lead you toward your point. Start with, for example, a memory about going to see The Sound of Music, getting it confused with Mary Poppins, and using that to leverage into the point that you're making. The idea is not to be a comedian. It's not to be a stand-up comic, but it's to use humor to make a serious point, to reinforce what people are taking away from your story. So think about what it is that you're going to put into your presentation in terms of humor and work out how to do it. Now, why should you insert humor? Well, for a start, it wakes your audience up. I mean, audiences tend to turn up at presentations not expecting to be entertained. They may expect to be informed, but they're not expecting to be entertained. But what's the advantage of entertaining them? Well, we all know that we remember things. How was it that Ralph Smedley put it when he formed Toastmasters back in 1924? We learn best in moments of enjoyment. Well, our audience learns best when we use humor to make a point. As I say, the idea is not to be a comedian, but to use that to reinforce what you are saying. And it's also useful to pepper humor through your presentation every few minutes. There's a reason why a Toastmaster speech is normally 5 to 7 minutes. Anyone know what that reason is? Well, I can't ask you because it's not that format. The real reason is that after about 7 minutes, we zone off. I mean, some of you may have zoned off by now, and if that's the case, look, I'm sorry, back here, now, okay? Seriously though, we do only have an attention span of around 5 to 7 minutes. So every 5 or 7 minutes, we need to put a change up in there somehow. A bit of humor might work. But we can use that humor to make a serious point. Let me give you an example, if I can. My mother died a few years ago, and I was given the task of delivering her obituary. Now, obituaries are a really tough gig. And I told some stories about my mum that were important, but I also told what I thought was a really funny story about her getting off a tram in the middle of George Street in Sydney and getting stuck between two trams going past each other. But what was funny about it was that it happened to be filmed by a local news crew, and the first time she had seen this was when she was sitting in the theatre full of people laughing at this stupid woman. It was a good story. It made everybody think good about my mum. And so that was what I did. I put it in there to make the humorous point that mum wasn't perfect, but she was my mum. You can use humor to make a serious point. You can use it and learn it, but you should practice it in a safe environment, like this one here. Humor is not jokes, it's wry observations that humanize you. Jot down things that you see happening wherever you go. And most importantly, let me tell you one last humor story that relates to The Sound of Music. When The Sound of Music was first released, it ran quite long. In fact, it required an interval in a number of theatres. Yes, I know you're about to clap me. I'll be finishing in about 15 seconds. In South Korea, they decided that the movie was going too long, and so they were going to shorten it. How did they shorten it? They took out all the songs. Madam Toastmaster.
I'm sitting there clapping and doing stuff, and I forgot this is my role. Thank you, Graham. Oh, that was my humor, I guess. Our next section of segment of our meeting is table topics, where we get to think on our feet and speak whatever comes out. It does for me anyway. So our topic master tonight is Elaine Nieverding. Elaine, it's your time.
Well, I'm going to defer to our timer, Asil, so she can actually give us a report on the time, and we can get voting or things started relative to our speakers.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Unfortunately, Graham was over time. Nik did 15 minutes and 19 seconds. I posted on chat. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Table Topics Master.
And so, my fellow online presenters, replay viewers, and honored guests, who would have thought is our theme of the day. The last time that I was Table Topics Master was January 20th of this year. The theme of the day that Nik Lakhani, our Toastmaster of the day, selected was the Chinese New Year. Well, indeed, at that time, we had no idea what was going to be happening in China and how it would impact us. In fact, as I started researching about Chinese New Year, I learned there were supply chain interruptions that happened as a normal part of the Chinese New Year, which goes on for weeks of celebration. Anyway, my first question relates to supply chain. Jim Gould. Supply chains and exports of goods to the U.S. are being disrupted by the coronavirus outbreak, originally in China. Who would have thought? Are there particular product supply disruptions that you personally have concern about?
Madam Table Topics Master, this coronavirus situation has caused all sorts of problems in so many different places. In our particular business, we have a need to make thumb drives. We make these thumb drives, and we put files on these thumb drives, and part of our business is to make sure that people can use these thumb drives. All of these thumb drives, guess where they come from? They come from China. Now, if Chinese people aren't making these thumb drives, how are we going to get them? And then how are we going to get them to our customers? I am in a real pickle here. And speaking of pickles, did you know that cucumbers are sent from California all the way to China just to be processed, to be sent back to New York to be eaten as pickles? I think this is one of the most ridiculous things that I've ever heard in my life. Madam Table Topics Master.
One way or another, we're all in a little bit of a pickle with the coronavirus going on. Thank you, Jim Gould. Next, Tricia, tell me about a surprising experience that you had involving food. Like, who would have thought this would have been happening with my food? Tricia.
Thank you, Table Topics Master. I have to think about this. If I were going to answer this question about if I have ever thought and I could choose the topic, I have a good story. But in reference to food, if I relate it to the coronavirus, I think I'm going to do that. Because to me, I think we all have to be concerned about fresh food. And like the other pieces of information that were shared about the trail that food has to follow just to get back to the US and to even have fresh food, I think it's kind of frightening to think that right now we just have another thorn in that process. And our supplies, being able to get water, for instance, who would ever think, I mean, we have to pay attention to our water sources all the time. This is not the first time where they've had shortages of water. So to me, water is a big one. It's not food, but it's water, and we make our food with water. We steam vegetables with water. We drink water. We shower with water. So our water source is really important, and being able to have fresh water. So what we are told to do in this case is have like 2 weeks of water supply and food supply and alcohol. So if you don't have any hand sanitizer, you can make your own with that alcohol. So to me, who would ever think that there would be a problem with food when it seems like it's been a pretty regular occurrence, whether it's the coronavirus or any other phenomena these days. I think if we all just grow our own food, that would be wonderful, but then we'd have to worry about our soil content and the quality of our soil and the water that goes on their soil to give nourishment to the food that we grow. So that's what I have to say. Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Table Topics Master.
Thank you so much. I pray that we all eat well one way or another. I'd like to check with my timer, Asil. Are you still functioning as our timer?
I don't know what happened to my background or light, but
okay.
Yes. Jim,
I'd like to ask Jim Gould if he could fill in that capacity, please.
Jim Gold did 1:15 and Tricia 1:58.
Okay, no problem. I'll take care of it.
Asil, what I was arranging was I'm going to ask Jim to take over the timer capacity and use his backgrounds.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Carrying right along, I'd like to ask Teresa. Teresa, would you be willing to field a table topics question? Okay, please unmute. Teresa, who would have thought meditation and mindfulness practices would become common self-care wellness practices? Have you ever explored something like this, becoming the observer of your own thoughts?
This is so funny that you should happen to ask that question, Madam Toastmaster, because I am far more than an observer of my thoughts. I am attempting to become a master of my thoughts. And the way that I'm working on that includes a meditation practice that really is truly practice and less expertise than it is practice. You know, this is something that I've dived into fairly deeply, and it's fascinating how many different types of meditation that there are out there, and how many different types of self-awareness in the world. And perhaps in light of the coronavirus, who knows if being in quarantine might actually be a very good opportunity for many people to try a little bit of meditation while they're in quarantine. Because now hopefully none of us will go into quarantine, right? I'm not wishing that on anyone, but there's no better time to get inside yourself than where you're actually captivated in your own home, or perhaps even in your bedroom trying to improve your health. And you know, meditation is very closely aligned with health and well-being, because we have a great deal of stress in our work lives, and now we're going to have a great deal of stress, it looks like, in our personal lives as well. So I would highly recommend that if you haven't explored a little bit of meditation, it's very easy, and it really just starts with breathing and the breath. And what is more important to a respiratory illness than being focused on your breath and your breathing? So try it out. Breathe in slowly to a count of 5. Hold the breath for 1 or 2 seconds. Let it slowly go out to a count of 10. Repeat 5 times, and you may actually improve your health so much that the coronavirus doesn't even touch you. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster.
A woman after my own heart. Who knew that question would land in the right place? Who would have thought? I'd like to call on Chris Gold next. Chris, tell me about a time when a family member or a friend astounded you with a choice, a decision, or an accomplishment.
Madam Topic Master, a family member or a friend astonished me. Well, my husband astonishes me every day, especially lately with video editing and of sharks. We went diving with sharks, and I am not going to take my eyes off the sharks when I am underwater with them, yet he stays behind the camera and captures it all for our future memories. It actually isn't so astonishing, though. That's just what he does. That's just his normal way of being. The most astonished I've ever been was just an acquaintance at a RV rally. An RV rally, you understand, is just mostly a bunch of old people who travel around in their RVs. And this is one, we had a talent contest. Well, normally you have people playing spoons or doing tap dances. This one woman got up and she sang an opera that had all of our jaws on our chests. Who would have thought? Madam Topic Master.
Thank you, Chris. Actually, I'm not all that surprised you mentioned this beloved Jim. who we have come to know and love and also be astonished by. Thank you so much. I'd like to call on our guest, Emerald. Emerald, would you like to field a question? Unmute, please. Emerald, yes. Tell me something that significantly surprised you in your Toastmaster journey.
I think a lot of surprise coming from hearing our members' icebreaker. Lately, we have a new member. She grew up in Mexico. When she was in college in Mexico, she decided to apply for a study abroad program in France. And she never taken an airplane or leave her village before. And she was suddenly dropped into this French country without knowing the language. And she had very hard time and she was crying a lot, but eventually she decided she is going to learn French and survive the whole experience. And her icebreaker was so inspiring and also surprising. And I feel grateful to learn about a story like that, in my Toastmaster club. Thank you.
Thank you, Emerald. What you reflected back to us was the great pleasure of getting to know others from different cultures and lands and places, and how enriched we are by the great diversity that we experience in Toastmaster. Thank you for that great story. Do I have time for one more, or should we move on along? We have time for one more? Okay. Tiger, this is for you. Tiger, rather than who would have thought, I'm posing to you, who would have bought some idea or product that may well have otherwise been rejected or have eyebrows really raised over? It could be you or something else that you've witnessed where you're wondering, how did that get bought?
Excellent question, Miss Topic Master. I'm glad you saved me for last. When I was in my early 20s, I had a job working for a landowner in California. He owed me about $2,000, and he said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make you an offer. I'm going to give you $1,000. I'm going to take the other $1,000 and I'm going to invest it in this new company that I know. They're going to bottle water. And I'm going to give you stock in that water. And I looked at him. This was 1972. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, where it rains 300 days a year. I looked at him. I said, are you out of your mind? You're telling me that people are going to buy water? Seriously? Well, let me tell you, that $1,000 today would be worth probably about 1.7 million. And I would be on an island right now, maybe my own island, hanging out, as opposed to hanging out with my stepdad. So the question was, why would people buy water? In my ignorance, I passed on the opportunity, and I feel, in retrospect, like a complete idiot. Thank you very much.
Who would have thought Tiger would have come up with that kind of story? I appreciate all these great answers during table topics. And I'd like to now call on our timer for this section, Jim Gold, to give us a little report.
Okay, Madam Table Topics Master, I didn't get the time. I was the first speaker. Teresa spoke for 146, Chris 126, Emerald 124, and Tiger 127. I believe we all qualified. Vote for your favorite Table Topics person, Jim Gold, anytime you feel like it.
I'm going to repeat the names for you one more time. We had Jim, we had Tricia, we had Teresa, we had Chris, we had Emerald, and Tiger. They all qualified. Send your best vote to our vote counter, David Carr. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I get my role back?
Why not?
Thank you.
Deborah? Carr?
There we
I
are.
think she's coming. There she is.
Yeah, there I am. I'm back. I'm reading the chat and paying attention and just not paying attention. And surprise, it's nothing different for me. So we had some really great speeches. We had some very, very good table topics, and those are always surprising and fun. So I'm going to turn it over now to our general evaluator, Lois Margola.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster of the Day. This is the most important role of the entire meeting, hands down. Why is that, you ask? Well, I'm so glad you asked me that, because this is the time when we get feedback. You can give a great speech, you can give a great table topic, you can do everything so fabulous. But until you hear it from everybody else and how you can make it just a little bit better, you're on your own. This portion of the meeting will help our prepared speakers figure out what they did that was fabulous and what they could do to make it just a tad stronger. At the end, I'll call for the reports, and based on some suggestions from various members and talking over with my Vice President of Education, I am then going to give feedback on not only the evaluators and everything else, but also on the reports that we give for 1 minute. Let's get started with our evaluations. To evaluate Nik with his infamous online presence, please welcome distinct Toastmaster Lou Brown. Estelle, are you still the timer now? Estelle, are you back to being the timer?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Lou, Estelle's the timer.
Oh, I uttered a word already. Start over, Estelle. Thank you. Thank you, Madam GE, fellow Toastmasters. Nik, your job was to manage a difficult audience. My role is to not evaluate your speech, keep that in mind, Madam GE, but to evaluate your ability to diffuse and address those interruptions. For everyone else, there were 5 types of interrupters: the talker, the interrupter, I should say these are distractors, the chatterer, the arguer, and the silent type, not the silenter. These roles were assigned up front, and there were certain people assigned to them, and apparently there were some switcheroos because they weren't the folks that I thought they would be. So I actually had a hard time distinguishing the talker, interrupter, and chatterer in terms of their roles. Nothing wrong with that, though. One other aspect of your speech is how will you handle all of this professionally, respectfully, and strategically. You did very well in all of those areas, especially professionally and respectfully. You have such a relaxing and smooth voice that I don't know how anyone could actually get more defensive with you when you address or diffuse the situation. So we are very tolerant and patient, so kudos to you on that. I heard you use phrases like, please remember to turn off your microphone, mute your video. You said thank you when folks made an interruption. You also said phrases like, I appreciate your viewpoint. Let's hold what you want to talk about until the end, if you might address that later on in your speech, which is something that many speakers will encounter. And you also, again, did it with such a pleasing way that it was done so well. A couple of things I'd like to point out, which may not necessarily be, say, a fault of yours. It could be in the structure of the speech. This is very challenging speech and a little bit challenging to do an evaluation too. First, for someone like the silent type, I wasn't sure if how that person would interrupt because they're silent. So how the heck do you do that? However, these things can occur in a brick and mortar club. So one thing I actually thought might be a good idea is for all the distractors to have their mics on at the same time. That way, a chatterer, a silent type, an interrupter could all sort of do it at the same time, and maybe you can address one at a time. Not sure if that would totally work, but again, that's real life. There was one part where there was no interruptions for a long portion of your speech. So that would have been maybe an opportunity for you to cut in and say, I'll take a break and ask if anyone has any questions. And that could have prompted some distractors to actually distract you even more. It was obvious that Dave was the arguer. Now, you actually interrupt Dave's interruption, which is a little interesting. I also heard you use a phrase like, you need to do, which could make him even more defensive. Perhaps something like, well, how about if we look at it this way? Otherwise, you had so many good examples of diffusing. You handled them very well. And again, a challenging speech. I look forward to future speeches of yours. Madam GE.
Thank you, sir. Fabulous evaluation, but I expected nothing less. Our second speaker was Toastmaster Graham. Toastmaster Graham's speech was learning your style, engaging humorous path. Let's welcome one of our newer members, Sara, to evaluate. Sara?
Thank you, Madam President. Graham, thank you very much for giving that very informative speech. And your style is very fluent and you engage your audience well. I think 7 minutes is not a problem at all for you. Even after 7 minutes, I feel everybody is still very engaged and listening, and you make your audience laugh. And I'm looking at all the pictures and people here, and I see a lot of smiling faces. So that goes really well. And I really also appreciate a lot of personal stories that you are giving in a speech, including our shared love of Sound of Music and a lot of other movies, and also your speech at your mom's funeral. It's all very touching and very personal, so that connects with the audience really well. A few suggestions. I would recommend to think about a stronger ending of your speech. I feel it was kind of an end a little bit in a rush. It could be stronger. And I like the way that you're thinking to start and end with Sound of Music. I think at the beginning, the Sound of Music example, you actually gave 4 or 5 lessons you learned from Sound of Music that you might be able to shorten that to 2 or 3. And to make a more dramatic transition from Sound of Music to Mary Poppins, because it got me wondering, I wasn't really catching the twist between the 2 stories until a bit later on when you were reinforced. Oh, I was like, okay, now I get it, why you were doing that. That brings to my next thing. Throughout the whole speech, you barely used any gestures. I know it is very difficult to add hand gestures into speech, but since you're such advanced speaker, so I would challenge you to figure out a way to add more gestures, only at the point where you can use it to really emphasize what you want to communicate. I would also like to challenge you to think within the very, very limited 5 to 7 minutes you get, to see if it's possible to not only make your audience aware why they should use humor in their speech, but also how. I think right now you gave pretty good advice. You know, don't try to use jokes, but use relatable personal stories. That is funny. I think for people who's new to this, there might be other things they can learn in terms of, you know, don't take yourself too seriously, don't let ego get in the way. Or maybe you can give even more examples of excellent practice of humor insert in the speech. All in all, this is a very good topic, very important. I wish everyone have the opportunity to hear you and then learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Wonderful evaluation. Let's hear from our ancillary roles. First, we'll start with Jim Barber, our grammarian. How did we do, Mr. Grammar Cop?
Madam General Evaluator, we did excellent, as you would expect from such a group of accomplished speakers. Everyone made an excellent use of the English language, and so I'm going to focus on our two speakers this evening because they spoke the most. Let me start with Nik. First of all, I love the phrase that Nik used several times, newfangled technology. It's almost an oxymoron to combine those words, but I like that. It was used very effectively. But what I want to focus on, going back, we started our meeting with the Sergeant-at-Arms, Lou Brown, talking about that we're a diverse group and it's important not to offend anybody. We have to keep that in mind. And I think that's important. On the other hand, I think we should celebrate our diversity. And that means not suppressing it, not sanitizing it, but simply being careful what we say. And Nik did that so nicely. He used the phrase toddling along, which is probably a normal phrase in England. It's not something that's used in America that much, but that was a great phrase. We knew what you meant. You also, at another point, talked about a bit of spunk, as we say here in the UK. That was, again, very good because I recognized what you meant by a bit of spunk, but it's quite possible that somebody else might not. And so by defining it, a bit of spunk, as we say here in the UK, you're being diverse, but you're also recognizing that not everybody will understand what you're saying. Very well done. Our other speaker was Graham, and of course, Graham used all kinds of masterful uses of words, but what I want to focus on what he didn't say. Graham is a master of the pause. And all I can do is suggest that you go back, listen to the replay, and listen to what he said. He is so good at inserting pauses between words, between phrases, wherever they're needed, wherever they're appropriate. It's wonderful. Do that. Madam General Evaluator.
All right, as a reminder, these roles are 1 minute and Asil is timing them. Emily, how did we do in the chat box?
In the chat box, John Quick and Graham helped me with my role as chat monitor, so that was very helpful, thank you. Chris G gave some great tips on Zoom for holding down the space bar to speak and releasing to unmute. Nik, in his managing a difficult audience, got a lot of side comments that actually added to his actual speech. We did have David Carr, I believe it was, explaining that the interruptions were planned. We had other people, Andrew Byrne recommended that hybrid clubs were good in military deployment, and so on. Deb got some helpful comments on the fact that her mic seems to cut out when she looks down. And Sil got skillfully managed and also commented on losing her color and her video. Other than that, everyone pleasantly was thanking everyone for participating and so on. And so ends my report, Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you. Our watcher and our Vice President of Education, John Quick.
Madam General Evaluator, the general appearance of all our screens and backgrounds has improved tremendously over the last few years in this club. Two things I want to highlight today to make us more aware. One is our framing in the camera. The rules are similar to a passport photo. You want to take up about 2/3 of the screen, be nice and present in the middle. If we're back a little bit too far, we start to get kind of small. But what I've seen more commonly today is if our normal resting position is right at the limits, but then we get really excited or somebody presents something tiny or we have to reach over to type, we start to get a little bit cut off. So just be aware of where you are in the placement of the camera. One other tricky thing about Zoom is if you're watching gallery view and you pin someone up in the big view or you have it swapping, you can get a slightly different cutting. So that may be a reason to step even slightly back from where you might think you are normally, because you could be getting cutting off just based on how different people are viewing your screen at a particular time. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, John. Our all counter, Toastmaster Marty.
Well, Madam General Evaluator, it's my pleasure to say that we did very, very well as non-ah speakers. That is to say, I picked up only one ah each from two people, from Nik and from Tricia. They uttered them in a situation where I might well do the same, just hesitating a little bit and coming out with something that could be an ah, but wasn't really big, just barely noticed it. So I congratulate everyone involved, and I hope that I do as well. Madam Evaluator, take it away.
Thank you. And I'm going to leave the vote counter for our Toastmaster of the day and the big surprise there. It is now time for me to give my 2 to 3 minute evaluation of the meeting. We started out on time, and you have to thank Lou Brown. I don't know how long it took him to develop that opening speech. I know the board has had some hands in it, but it was really a nice opening. Deborah, kudos to you for getting all those helpers and moving things around. That is not an easy thing to do. One thing to be aware of when you're Toastmaster of the day, that you're on more than you're off, just to pay a little bit of attention instead of having all those surprise moments. Elaine, great job asking for the timing of the speeches and just kind of moving along and acknowledging that Asil's timing wasn't working. That worked out well. One of the things, however, when you do table topics, and you can find this in one of the Toastmaster magazines, I've read this just recently, I think I was reading a 2012 or 2013 magazine, is that instead of saying the name of who you're asking first, you want to say the topic, and then we're all on edge going, ooh, is it me? Is it me? Then say their name, and then their topic. That puts us all on edge thinking it could be yours. Otherwise, you are masterful at that. Thank you for getting our guests involved. Jim Gould, I liked your answer, but I would have liked a better ending to the pickle story. Something where you actually said it goes to China and back, and you know what? I'm just not going to be getting my pickles. Something to wrap that table topic up completely. My job as the evaluator is not to re-evaluate the speakers, just evaluate overall the meeting. But one thing I did notice is, yeah, Nik, you are really polite. I wonder if that's just natural or for this speech, but you were incredibly polite. Lou, you nailed that. And I have to say, our audience was just too polite. Whoever these different people were, I was like, oh my gosh, I took that role. I would have been in on this, and I would have said this, and if I was the interrupter, I could have so nailed the role. If you have an ancillary role and they tell you you're supposed to be talkative or interruptions, do it. Going on to part 4, Sara, newest member Sara came out with a strong evaluation. I was very impressed watching that first evaluation. Graham, I would have loved for your speech to have ended you singing one of the Sound of Music songs that got taken out. Thought that would have been cute. Jim Barber, your screen does not look like a surprise. It looks like something that says, here's Jimmy, kind of like the here's Johnny from, what movie was that? The Shining. John Quick gave fabulous tips as the watcher. He even got close to show you how to do things. And one thing John did, which I'm going to ask everybody to do going forward, is he fed me some tips to use during my general evaluation. And that is something that we should all be doing, is helping the general Evaluator evaluate the entire meeting. Thank you, John, for that. Marty, you are ready to go. You had your speaker on, ready to go. The only thing is you're not looking at the camera itself, so you might want to figure out how to adjust that. And lastly, well, actually, I did my lastly in the middle. John, thank you for all your VPE tips and all the help that you gave. And that is my general evaluation. And I hope that we have all seen the value of having a stronger evaluation instead of just saying, oh, this is such a great meeting. Let's put some meat into that. Please welcome back our Toastmaster of the Day, Deborah Carr.
Thank you, Lois. Thank you very much. What a great overall, eval on everything. What I do want to tell you is I did not realize it when I read the initial positions that each person had and Tiger reminded me, because I said, why aren't you jumping back in? He said, we only get to speak once, and I didn't know that. So that's why there was a big segment periodically through there. So we have the vote counter tonight is David Carr. David, if you will tell us who was the best with table topics.
Sure. We got to mention Nik too. Nik's our best speaker. There might have been a foot fault involved, but he's our best speaker tonight.
Right.
Table topics. Chris Gold. Hey, Chris. And best evaluator of the evening is Sara. Brand new to the club and off to a strong start.
And as we know, Nik took it away tonight with the best speech. It's been a wonderful meeting. I deeply appreciate everybody jumping in at the last minute to help out with Nik's speech, and for everyone taking their position to help out, bring the whole meeting come together. Surprise, we did it, and we also are 2 minutes early. Do we have any? Andy's going, yay. So,
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you,
There you
Deborah.
go.
Great job as our Toastmaster of the Day. Couple of things real fast. We do need a Toastmaster of the Day for next week. Who would like to take?
I signed up.
Pardon? You got it?
I signed up. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, John. Our guest, let's hear how we did. Brian, did it meet your expectations? What did you think? You're on mute. Hang on, let me unmute you. I can unmute you. Can you unmute yourself? David Carr, can you help?
I just did it.
Let's
Well, I thought I did.
Somebody unmuted me. That's just funny.
Me too. There it goes. I was pressing the space bar.
Oh, there you go, David. Brian,
I was
okay,
hitting that space bar going, why is this not unmuting myself? I've got a gamer headset, so I usually just mute myself here, but this is a newfangled technology for me. I had a great meeting. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think it's always a good opportunity to see other people and see how they run their meetings. And so I really enjoyed myself, and I look forward to coming back again and again and again, and possibly joining you guys someday.
Awesome. Well, we look forward for you to join us also. Emerald, what did you think?
Yes, thank you so much for this wonderful online experience. Yeah, I was surprised to learn that you guys can change your background. I got to figure out how to do that. And for timer to use the background as signal is very effective. And I got to implement that in our own club meeting. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And you can see Jim Gould is showing us all up because we all have regular one screen. He has to have a video. So now we all have to figure out how to do that. I don't think he taught us that yet. Let's see, Teresa. Oh, Deborah, did you want to say something?
What we didn't have is the best evaluator was Sara.
Yes, you mentioned it.
What was her name mentioned?
Yeah.
Congratulations, Sara, again. Teresa, what did you think?
It's not late. I haven't slept. It's full moon.
Great
Can
meeting.
I blame it on anything? Surprise.
Great meeting, Madam General Evaluator. Wonderful to be a guest. Thank you, everyone.
Well, we hope to see you back again. We do have our contest coming up in 2 weeks. We have 6 contestants. Yay! We have 2 timers. John, how are we doing on our chief judge and our contest master?
We need a chief judge and contest master to be able to hold this contest. So if that could be you, make sure to get in touch.
All right, maybe Nick or Jim Barber or Graham, one of you who have been through it again, or are any of you speaking in the contest?
I'm speaking, but I'll be a judge.
All right, well, John will be reaching out to a bunch of you to see if we can get you to be our chief judge or our contest master. Unfortunately, I will not be here that week. I'm kind of bummed, but it's going to be a great contest, I have no doubt. With that, it is 9:01. I am going to go ahead and conclude the meeting. Willie, welcome. You came in just a little bit late. Oh, I like that, Chris. I'm going to go ahead and conclude it. Yes, thank you. I can do that on both hands. I'm really good at that. We will stay out there for about 5 or 10 minutes if anybody wants to stay and ask questions and learn any special tips. And Jim Gould, will you please put on your future speech to teach us how to have moving backgrounds? All of ours are just stagnant. With that, meeting adjourned. Great job, everybody. Woo! I wasn't sure we were going to get through the whole thing.